Hi there everyone, we're going to talk about noun clauses in this video. Noun clauses are really fun but sound really scary. They're a type of form that you need to know how to use, and you're probably already using in your writing and your speaking. But if you're new to English, maybe you're making a mistake in them. They're one of the most common types of mistakes that I see. Not noun clause being a mistake, but mistakes with noun clauses. So I'm going to talk to you about what noun clauses are and how to avoid the most common mistakes that I see in them. So if you know what a noun is and you know what a clause is, you might know what a noun clause is, but you might not. A noun is a person, place, thing, or idea. And clause is just a group of words that has a subject and a verb inside of it. A noun clause is a clause that can be used like a noun. It can function like a noun within a sentence, just like a subject or an object inside of a sentence. Let me show you. So here's a sentence or a clause. I know Josue. Subject, verb, object, complete sentence. It doesn't have to have an object, but it's a complete sentence, okay? This is a noun. It's a person. A noun is a person. I know Josue. So I can replace this noun with a noun clause. So let's look at these two sentence endings. Here I said, I know Josue, I said, I know that Josue is funny. That Josue is funny is the noun clause. It starts with the word that, which is a signal that it's a noun clause. Sometimes they look like adjective clauses, but how do we know it's a noun clause? Because it's coming after a verb and not a noun, okay? But that signals that this is a noun clause, and it's a clause because it has a subject and verb inside. Josue is. That's the subject, that's the verb. I know that Josue is funny. I know Josue. So this is one noun clause. It functions as a noun, okay? Another type of noun clause could be this one. I know where Josue lives. Where Josue lives is acting like a noun within this sentence, but it's really a clause within itself because it starts with a WH word. That's important, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. Starts with a WH word, and it has a subject and a verb inside of it, and it functions as a noun. And the last kind of noun clause we can make is one like this. I need to know if Josue is funny. I'm starting with if or whether. I need to know if Josue is funny. So it starts with if, and then it has a subject and a verb inside of it, acting as a noun, but it's a noun clause. Now let me show you how these are made. Now first off, there's three types of noun clauses that we can create. The first type is the ones that start with the word that, okay? That. And then afterwards we have a subject and a verb. Now, because noun clauses act like nouns, they could be the subject of a sentence or they could come after the verb. So let me show you how that would look in both of these. That Josue is funny is obvious to me. Here, this whole thing is a noun clause acting like the subject of this sentence. So I'm just going to write subject, and then here's the main verb of the sentence. The noun clause starts with the word that, and then it has a subject and a verb inside itself, okay? Now that verb could be in the present, it could be in the past. It just depends on what time frame you want to use. Maybe you knew Josue and you're talking about him from high school and not now. That Josue was funny in high school is obvious now or was obvious then. Just depends. You could change the verb tense around depending on what you're trying to say. Now here we can see the noun clauses being used at the end after the verb. It is obvious to me that Josue is funny. Here's the subject. Here's the verb. It's obvious to me. What's obvious to me? That Josue is funny. Here's my noun clause. Starts with that, has a subject and a verb inside of it. So one thing to notice is that we use the that noun clauses at the beginning of sentences and after verbs, or after, a sentence ends, like if you're trying to say something's obvious, something's funny, something's scary, right? But oftentimes when we're using them at the end of a sentence, it comes after certain verbs. Let me tell you what those verbs are. Now, this is not all of them, but this is some of the common verbs that we use with noun clauses afterwards with the word that. So like, I think that Josue is funny. I believe that he is not. I heard that he lives in LA. I hope that that is true. I know that he works at a college. I read that he was going to become a professor. I remember that he liked studying languages. I understand that he may be applying for a new job soon. These are all really great verbs that you can use with that and a noun clause after them. Just so you know, it is also possible to take away the word that when you're making a noun clause, especially when you're talking. And I actually recommend that you take out the word that when you're talking. And when you're writing, keep it in. It's a little bit more academic. But for example, I understand that I need to submit my work on time. I understand I need to submit my work on time. See, I took the word that out. That's fine. You can do that. It's great. It's common. It's useful when you're speaking. It makes you talk faster. Now, here's a note on using that, which is actually grammatical. Let me show you. Imagine somebody says, here, use this. And I say, oh, yeah. I think that will work. I think that will work. You can take out the first that before the noun clause, and this that is a pronoun for what the person was talking about. It's the subject of the noun clause. So I think that will work, or I think that will work. Either way is fine. Of course, when you're writing and you have two that's, that looks kind of weird, so you could take it out. When you're talking, you take it out usually anyway. We also use the that noun clauses after adjectives that describe people. This is very common. Okay, let's take a look at these adjectives. Notice all of these adjectives describe a person's state, their feelings. Surprised, amazed, confused. All these words describe how a person feels, okay? You have to make sure you're using adjectives like that if you want to do this. So you can say, I'm surprised that you want to go running with me. I'm confused that you thought you had to submit your paper 1 week after the due date. I'm glad that we live close to each other. I'm proud that you have done so well at learning English. I'm sad that learning languages is just so hard. All right. So again, same thing. You could take the word that out and say, I'm sad learning languages is so hard. I'm proud you've learned English so well. I'm glad that we live close to each other, or I'm glad we live so close to each other. You can take the word that out. Okay, the next kind of noun clause that we use are the noun clauses that start with the WH or question words. Instead of the word that, they start with a WH question word. So these are the WH question words that we use when we want to make a noun clause about some information, or whether we know it or not, or who or how or why. Let me show you. I want to know Janet. Janet is a noun. We can replace that noun with a noun clause. Let's say we don't know who Janet is and we want to know who she is. I want to know who Janet is. I want to know who Janet is. Who is the WH word that starts the noun clause. Janet's the subject, is the verb. I want to know who Janet is. That's my noun clause. It's acting like a verb. So we use these WH question word noun clauses when we have a question usually, and we don't want to ask it directly. Like, who is Janet? Sometimes it's too direct to ask a question. When will you have my paper? Right? Instead, we can put that question, turn it into a noun clause, but start with something like this, like, I want to know, or I wonder, or I'm curious, something, right? Like, look at this question. Sometimes people are afraid to ask sometimes students are afraid to ask their teachers direct questions like, when will my paper be done? When are you going to grade it? When will the teacher grade our papers, right? When will you grade our papers? And instead, they can feel better about not being too direct. And they can say, I wonder, or I want to know, here's the question word, when, find the subject, the teacher, that's what comes next. I wonder when the teacher, now we need a verb. Here's the verb, will grade. And then finish the sentence. Period. No question mark, because it's not a question. I wonder when the teacher will grade our papers. That's a sentence with a noun clause in it, but it acts sort of as a question too. Now, the biggest mistake I see with noun clauses is right here. This is a question. So when we have a question, we usually have question word order. That means you put the verb before the subject. But this is not a question. It's a noun clause. You need to put the subject before the verb. However, a lot of times students will see a question word. They will see a question word, and because they're really good at studying all these rules, they say, oh, that means I need to put subject, verb, opposite, put the verb before the subject, and they'll do this. And they'll say, I wonder when will the teacher grade our papers? And here's where you have the error, okay? Because this is not a question, it's a sentence, it's a statement with a noun clause. And because it's a noun clause, you need subject and then verb. Subject and then verb. So take that verb and put it after the subject, always. I mean, it's an easy fix, right? Let's look at another example. Okay, here we go. Imagine you want to meet with somebody to do something. So you say, okay, when can you meet? When can you meet? You could also say, I need to know, or I want to know, or I wonder when, question word first, subject, you, then the verb, the rest of the verb. I need to know when you can meet. I need to know when you can meet. Be careful not to say when can you meet. That's not correct. When you can meet. Here's one that's a little bit harder. Where did he go? Where did he go? All right, here's our question. We want to turn that into a noun clause. I wonder, question word, where, now we need the subject. He. I wonder where he, what's the verb? Did and go. Now, you do not need to use did in a noun clause. Did is only when we're creating negative sentences or questions. This is not one of those, okay? So all you need to do is take this verb and put it here, but be careful because you gotta carry the verb tense with it. This is in the past tense, so this needs to be in the past tense. I wonder where he went. Be careful. A lot of people would say, I wonder where did he go, and that's not correct. You want to say, I wonder where he went. One more tricky situation. Now, this whole time I've been telling you, don't put a question mark at the end of a noun clause, even though it has a question word, because it's not a question, it's a statement. Well, sometimes you can put a question mark at the end of a noun clause when the entire sentence is a question. Okay, where did he go? And then you start your sentence like this with a question. This already is question word order. Do you know? That already is a question. Now we can add our noun clause. Do you know where he went? Don't put a period. Now you got to put a question mark because this is question word order. So just watch out for the beginning of a sentence. Is it a question or is it a statement? If it's a statement, you're going to use a period after your noun clause. If it's a question, you're going to use a question mark after your noun clause. Now, the third type of noun clause is used with the words if or whether, and they're used when we want to ask a yes-no question. Here we have 3 yes-no questions. Are you hungry? Yes or no. Can we help? Yes or no. Do you like pie? Yes or no. As you can see, the only answer you can give for these questions are yes or no. They are not information questions. So when we want to ask an indirect question or embed a question into what we're saying, but it's a yes-no question, we're going to use if or whether. So again, we're going to start with I wonder, or I want to know, or I need to know, or I want to understand, okay? I wonder, then we're going to turn this question into a noun clause, and we're going to start with one of these words. I wonder if, now what's the subject? You. I wonder if you, what's the verb? Are. Now finish it. I wonder if you're hungry. Are you hungry? You don't need a question mark here. It's not a question, it's a statement. You could make it a question. You could say, can you tell me, that's a question. Can you tell me if you are hungry? Question mark, that's fine, okay? Now let me tell you something about the words if and whether. If is much more common, especially in speaking, also in writing. Whether is more formal. So if you want to sound more academic and more formal in your writing, you could use the word whether instead of if. So, I wonder whether you are hungry. Now another tip about the word whether is we can add or not to it. Okay, so I can say, I wonder whether or not you are hungry. I wonder whether or not you are hungry. But I could also put that or not at the end. I can say, I wonder whether you're hungry or not. You could put it at the end. It doesn't really make a difference, I don't think. But please don't do it with if, okay? I wonder if or not you are hungry. I wonder if you are hungry or not. This actually only works when it's at the end of a sentence, not here, but I feel like it's just so confusing. So I always tell my students, if you're using if, don't use or not. Only use or not with whether. And it isn't necessary, but it is very common to use or not when you're using the word whether. Okay, so let's try this one out. Can I turn my essay in late? I want to know if, let's say we're talking, if, subject, I, verb, can turn my essay in late, period, not a question. I want to know if I could turn my essay in late. More formal would be, I want to know whether I can turn my essay in late. And to add to that, you can say, I want to know whether or not I can turn my essay in late. Or I want to know whether I can turn my essay in late or not. All right, last one. Did he call? I want to know if or whether he called or called. It's going to be called because this is did. I want to know if he called, period. Now be careful. Again, that common mistake with noun clauses is also very common with the if and whether noun clauses, because students see, okay, I'm asking a question, so they'll say, if did he call, like that. They'll take all of that, did he call? I want to know if did he call. And that's not correct because it's not a question anymore, so you do not need that helping verb for making questions. Instead, you just need the subject and the verb, but make sure the verb is in the correct tense. This is past, so make sure it's past. Those are the 3 types of noun clauses that exist. There are noun clauses that are used very often in reported speech, but that is a whole other video and topic. I hope this video was helpful for you so you can up your English game and also avoid some of the most common noun clause errors. Bye-bye.